Books and newspapers serve many purposes. Throughout the years, journalism has been used to connect people and ideas, spread news and opinions, and create tension by exposing the flaws and corruptions of society. Abolitionists, civil rights leaders, revolutionaries, and many others have used their writings to provoke change in America. Exercising the right of the First Amendment has been a concrete foundation of American life. However, the continued censorship and banning of American literature calls into question the true nature of American freedoms. The development of censoring and banning literature throughout United States history and the strong correlation with cultural and government agendas at the time demonstrate the influence of societal pressures and barriers in the freedom of American lives. White Southerners were outraged at the dehumanizing depiction of slavery in the U.S. and saw the novel as criminal and slanderous. Southern novelist William Gilmore Simms called the book utterly false. However, many Northerners and abolitionists admired the novel and supported its ideals. This book was published in 1852 and instantly became a bestseller. It stood out among other abolitionist writings because it was a fictional novel written by a white woman. In this novel, Harriet Beecher Stowe uses heartwarming stories of family and religion to help humanize Tom, who was a slave. Because Stowe was successful in targeting her audience, white Northerners, this novel had a huge historical impact. When Abraham Lincoln met author Harriet Beecher Stowe, he said, "So this is the little lady who made this big war." This book fueled the spread of abolitionist beliefs in the North, while disrupting and spreading fear throughout the slave-dependent South.
You know, this month we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the publication of an American classic. It's a book I read in school myself. My guess is that most of you read it in school too. Its title, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
This novel has caused great controversy as schools decide whether or not to teach this book. New South Books has published a new edition of Mark Twain's iconic novel, replacing all 219 instances of the N-word to slave. Many critics believe that this slight change alters the meaning of the book.
We cannot avoid being hurt. Language hurts people, reality hurts people. If the word nigger did not have meaning today, we wouldn't care that it was in Huckleberry Finn. The hurt is that it still does have meaning. The hurt is that what happens on the playground is reflected in the book, not the other way around. People sometimes think the book causes things. It only causes things if there are things there waiting to happen. Yes, if it's handled incorrectly, if it's handled without sensitivity, this can be the spark that sets off the powder keg, but it's not the powder keg. And if I go into a school or talk to a school administrator who says, well, gee, this book is going to cause all kinds of trouble, I'm going to say, you already got the trouble.
Huck Finn's addition to many English high school curricula coincided with the Montgomery bus boycotts and Brown v. Board of Education's decision, which ended public school segregation. This was the beginning of the modern civil rights movement.
Jesus gave me life, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, now Jesus gave me life, and I'm gonna let it shine. Well, now Jesus gave me life, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, 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 I'm gonna let my little light shine.
Now both black and white children were reading this controversial novel. While many white families laughed off the tragic past of slavery in America, black students and their parents were outraged by the portrayal of blacks in Huck Finn. Many pointed to the original illustrations in the novel to support their claim.
The book says that black people steal, that they lie, they're not as intelligent as white people, and that they are not human. Any book that says that is a racist book.
The original illustrations of Huck Finn portrayed Jim as poor, malicious, and ape-like. In 1885, many schools banned this novel in attempts to minimize conflict. Catch-22 is the paradoxical situation in which an individual has no form of escape because of contradictory rules. In his novel Catch-22, Joseph Keller coined this term as he wrote about a soldier's experience in World War II. He used this logic to explain the ridiculous constraints and systematic regulations of the U.S. Army.
Anyone who wants to get out of combat isn't really crazy, so I can't ground him. Okay, let me see if I got this straight. In order to be grounded, I've got to be crazy. And I must be crazy to keep flying. But if I ask to be grounded, that means I'm not crazy anymore and I have to keep flying. You've got it. That's Catch-22.
This book was censored in many schools because the novel contained objectionable language. However, the underlying reason the book was banned was because it ridiculed and mocked the U.S. Army and government. Persepolis is a graphic novel that describes a young girl's experience of growing up during the Iranian Revolution. Although the graphic novel received some backlash through the Middle East at the time of publication, the book was not officially banned until March 2013, when Chicago Public Schools called for all copies of the novel to be pulled from classrooms. Barbara Byrd Bennett's reasoning was that the graphic language and images were not appropriate for general use. This action exposed the irony in banning a book that is focused on freedom of speech. Critics of the CPS system made accusations that the violence depicted in this novel was no worse than what students studied for the Holocaust and slavery units, as well as what many experience in their daily lives. The censorship of Persepolis brings about arguments over the role of Islamophobia and prejudice of non-traditional American religions in American societal and governmental agendas. Throughout the years, the U.S. government has banned many books with various reasons and excuses. However, the real reason these pieces of literature are censored are often because of their attacks and negative implications against American government and society. Uncle Tom's Cabin called into question the societal structure of America. Huck Finn brought light to the tension between blacks and whites. Catch-22 directly attacked the U.S. Army, and Persepolis displayed U.S. discrimination towards Middle Eastern culture. Today, there are many more novels that insinuate flaws in our society. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian describes the long-term impacts of the treatment and forced assimilation of Native Americans during America's westward expansion. And Tango Makes Three, a children's picture book, shines light on the prejudice against the LGBTQ community throughout the U.S. The First Amendment grants the public the right of free speech, press, and petition. By censoring and banning literature, the American government and society are taking this right away from us. We cannot achieve the democracy we idolize while sustaining the oppression of basic fundamental rights.